Welcome to episode 79 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Dick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host as always, and it has been 2 weeks since our last episode. A lot has happened in the free agency and the trade period. We've also got a couple of retirements to cover, but both Psyrick and I have been very busy in real life, and speaking of in real life, that is where we are.
Hello. I am in Melbourne. We have joined forces for PAX weekend and decided it is as good as time as any to do our first face-to-face podcast. And yeah, I'm excited for it. Honestly, my brain's a bit fried, so a lot of the information we've been covering is probably going to be news to me. But we're going to wrap up all of the free agency news and all that's happened since our last 2 weeks. But yeah, just introduction. How good's been the weekend?
Oh, it's been crazy. So for those that are somewhat aware of the stuff that I do outside of the podcast, I'm a part of a production company called HSP, Hammer and Shield Productions. We worked with a bunch of creators at PAX this year to run a bunch of panels and like community meetups and things of that nature. We took a lot of photographs. I have badly hurt one of my quadriceps because of all of the running around that I've been doing. But it was good. We got to see all of our friends. I got to see a ton of new faces as well, which is always a good time. And yeah, I think overall, the weekend was a very good success.
I would say so too. Also in PAX, in the Indie Showcase, I got to play Pro Jank football. I'm not sure if you did. You were quite busy.
Didn't, but I did spot it.
But it was very fun to play. So shout out to Pro Jank football. It's very arcadey. It's like NBA Jam mixed with AFL loosely. But, as I said, it's probably one of the most fun AFL games I've had. So, yeah, check it out on Steam. Yeah, shout out to them. They were very nice there. So
yeah, I might put the link to that down in the description of the YouTube video and probably the Spotify episode as well. So please go check that out. Shall we just jump straight into our big bit of news?
Yeah, there's a lot to unwrap.
So our first one we're going to cover is actually not this one. Yes, no, I guess apparently it is this one.
Yeah.
The big O, Oscar McInerney, calls time after the fairy tale premiership of 2025.
Yeah, and this one sort of like, it just makes sense. As I said, if you've been listening to the podcast, while we've been talking about the finals, you know that Oscar McInerney, very important ruck piece there. I wanted to get him into the finals, but his body was pretty banged up. And honestly, he only just sort of limped his way there. But it was very good to cap off what was a very serviceable career by him. Not a very long one, always a bit injury prone. But picked up in, rookie draft. Okay, from 2016, bit of a project ruckman, debuted in 2018, and had a 165-game career. Sort of came in when Brisbane were in the doldrums, really. I think a couple of years before Chris Fagan would have been 2018, maybe one. I think it might have been before COVID, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, sort of the... Well, actually, I don't know. Who was the Brisbane ruck before McInerney? Do you remember? It wasn't Leuenberger. It was...
No,
I'm testing my memory banks. But, yeah, so as I said, very serviceable ruckman when he was able to get on the park. Sort of one of those ones that's developed late. I think is only really being considered like a top 5 ruckman in the last, let's say, when he was 27 to 30. But yeah, as I said, just provided a lot around the ground. Very good tip out. And has pretty decent accurate, like hit out percent accuracy, hit out to advantage, and stats and all that sort of thing. And yeah, just very serviceable. As I said, the rise of Darcy Fort probably has allowed him to retire because, as I said, otherwise it'd be a bit iffy to say, like, as I said, if you said 2 years ago, like, Oscar McInerney just went, you'd be asking, who's gonna rock at Brisbane. But Fort's been serviceable enough. His body seems to be a bit harder, and it's like one journeyman ruckman that, may not have gotten all out of his career goes, and, another one who's got a very late resurgent comes and takes his place.
Yeah, they ended up being like a really, really interesting dynamic duo. In terms of the double ruck system that it looks like a couple of other teams are looking to try and do this year, such as St Kilda, for an example. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, I think the Big O just he always gave it his all. He was very much a team first kind of man, and we
Yeah.
saw that a lot in 2024 when he couldn't play in the grand final, and Darcy Falk got that opportunity. It's it's always really heartbreaking to see players of that caliber kind of just
Yeah,
have to retire.
and especially because, yeah, as I said, he'd already had, fairly, maybe not limited, but you know what I mean. As I said, he's not a big, like, he hasn't had the biggest career, but, he's someone that Brisbane fans hold in high esteem. And yeah, as I said, to get that reward, as I said, the big O, the big skinny, gets to sail off in a pretty big high. But as I said, I just got a feeling that his body probably wasn't conducive to playing more football.
Mm-hmm.
So he can go out, take a break, and yeah, as I said, continue whatever he wants to do. I'm not sure if he's involved in any coaching or anything like that. As I said, unfortunately, a few of these things I not as on the ball today. But yeah, anything else?
No, I think that's really it for to cover. Like he kicked 67 goals as a big rock, which isn't all too surprising. He was more of a defensive rock than a very lethal forward rock, but he was always
Yeah.
happy to go down there, make space when need be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was just like one of those ones where he wasn't a forward rock, but he was very much a still and around the ground sort of rock. So, yeah, as I said, just, yeah, like very useful. His disposable's honestly okay. Like, he definitely wasn't an on the ground player. Like, he doesn't pick it up as well as some of the modern rucks do, but you could still given the handball chain, get him involved, and he would still most of the time do the right things with ball in hand. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next on our list is another list change from Brisbane, another retirement with inaugural son Sam Day retiring from the AFL.
Yes, quote unquote Brisbane legend Sam J. Honestly, he's one of those players that, I guess, very high pick in that initial draft, pick 3 in that 2010s. Your Suns get their fingers in the pie, so to speak, draft. Pick Dixon, Day, Prestia? Was that draft?
Prestia was inaugural, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, and you know what? Probably didn't reach those heights again, those early Suns, especially in that forward line. Like, there's so much contrast to how GW West developed their 12 forwards and how Gold Coast developed their 12 forwards, in the fact that they really didn't. You got Sam Day, Alex Sexton.
Yeah.
Sexton, obviously, now a bit more of a defender. There was another one too. I mean, Charlie Dixon was good, but he obviously left, and I feel like there was a couple more. Even like Trent McKenzie when they were playing him as a forward. Yeah, didn't really get that much. But you know what? Still pretty serviceable. There was he was just sort of, after it was sort of clear that he wasn't going to be like a 2 goal a game sort of forward. He would just be second up, provide, at best like a goal a game sort of thing. He apparently did kick 2 goals a game in the 5 games he played in 2004. But yeah, as I said, he's just, it's just one of those things where it's like an okay mark and, reasonable shot for goal. I don't think he was ever inaccurate. He's just didn't quite get involved in the play as much as, a player of his draft status would indicate. But as I said, when you're a key player, just getting on the park, getting involved is always very important. Finished up on 120 goals from 168 games. And as I said, finished sort of as more of a utility than pure forward, and was able to help out in that defence until he went to Brisbane and played as a forward. Obviously, with the I was going to say resurgence, the rise of not only you're going to have to help me. What's his name? Logan Morris.
Yes.
And the next one down on the rank. What was that?
The one who literally just won in a grand final.
Ty Gallup.
Yes.
So obviously with Ty Gallup being able to help out Logan Morris, Sam Day wasn't as needed. But as I said, for Brisbane, it was still nice when they were struggling with injuries to have him around. So I think they'll appreciate his services. I think the Suns will appreciate his services as an inaugural player. And yeah, as I said, there's really not much to say. You know, as I said, it's just like, yeah, maybe not the, career of a number 3 pick, but, as I said, it was tough going in those early Suns teams. It was a mess.
It
So,
was.
as I said, he got a bit out of it. He's still got to play AFL football for 168 games, and that's well higher than the average player gets to. So,
Absolutely. And it's when you look at those initial Sun rosters, it really does tell you that like a team of star top tier draft champions do not really make a team at all.
yeah, because even the ones that have gone on, because, as I said, like, I think even Dion Prestia, the who's the other one?
It was Josh Caddy in there before he went to
Oh, Jeff Caddy is
Tom
again
Lynch.
did better in another system. Tom Lynch, Charlie Dixon. I know he still had like really good years at the Suns, but I think Port Adelaide sort of suited him when he had other players around him, especially when his body wasn't quite keeping up. So, yeah, as I said, Sam Day. As I said, you might knock it, but as I said, there's tons of players like Sam Colquhoun, Seb Tape, Sean Lemons. I keep on forgetting he played nearly 170 odd games, but you know what I mean. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of fringy Suns players that really fell out of the system. To survive that, is still a good indication that you're at least doing the right things. Maybe it's more through training, maybe it's more through your professionalism. But yeah, like worthy enough to stick around for as long as he did, even though he never really took to the field as much as other players might have.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where just you want to hope that a player is able to get the most out of their body, and if the body starts failing them too early, they just don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, he did also have periods. I think he had 1 year that he was out with like an ACL.
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
So, as I said, it's and you know what, he never really took to the part afterwards. You never know whether it was just like a skill thing or yeah, your body's not quite right, so we're just going to keep you around for depth thing. So, yeah, I think he probably after that year he only had a couple of seasons with over 10 games. I did
Yeah,
look at it before, but yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone looking at.
I have it here.
Yeah,
So 2025 he played 13 games, including the qualifying final. 2020 played 17 games at the Suns, 10 in 2019, 12 in 2018,
yeah,
full 20 games in 2016, and then 14 in 2015, 22 in 2014, 20 in 2013, and 15 in 2012.
yeah. So again, so he actually did play a couple of seasons after. It was post COVID that he sort of fell out of rotation, but.
Yes.
As I said, the Suns were needing to rebuild that list because again, they were dire at that 2020 period. Stewie do look like a capable coach, but their list was an absolute dog's breakfast. So,
Yes.
as I said, unfortunately, even if you are serviceable, sometimes you do have to get harsher on those sort of players. But yeah, as I said, still hung around for a bit, got to a Brisbane side, did what he needed to do, and called it a day.
Pretty much. So, as we should have done with the Big O, and we will do with Sam Day, we salute you, and we hope you have a wonderful retirement. Next on our agenda is Jack Steele advising St Kilda that he no longer wants to be captain.
Yes, a part of the whole captaincy gate, I suppose, of, captains maybe not quite happy with their role or maybe not happy with the what the clubs are doing at the moment.
Oscar
Probably,
Allen,
yeah.
Jai Simpkin, Zach Merritt.
Mm.
There was another one that I'm already blanking on. It wasn't a captain who's moved teams, I don't think.
Yeah.
That might have been Simpkin. I can't.
Anyway.
Yeah, this is definitely something interesting for St Kilda because when you look at their list, you would think that someone like maybe, oh god, I'm already blanking. Their key back.
I'll keep back Wilkie.
Yeah, you would think someone like Wilkie would maybe take up the captaincy just because he's always been so dependent, always has such really good leadership skills.
Yeah,
but it's hard to look at that when there's also been rumors that he has been interested in a trade over the past couple of years.
It could be like back to back, as I said. But I mean, it really depends because I think Cam Wilkie is a player. Cal Wilkie is a player you can sort of build around. And I do think he would make a solid leader. Like you can tell Well, I mean, it's always hard. Like, you can't judge captaincy, but you know that he's a player that can bring other people together. Like, Cal Wilkie hasn't exactly been having the best second and third defender, especially this year when Josh Battle has gone. So, you know what? Like, maybe with this refresh, because there's a lot of players thinking of going to St Kilda, maybe they can get Wilkie on board, pitch to him and he'll agree. Just soft say that he's going to stay at St Kilda for a while. But, yeah, as I said, the only other one, maybe Jack Sinclair. He's getting a bit old in the tooth, but as I said, he's been a very reasonable service. He can go in the middle if need be. So if they need to have that captain's effort in a game, he's easy to sort of activate there. So I think those would be the front runner.
Agreed.
As for Jack Steele, obviously part of this is the rumours that he wants to sort of go to another club. It would make sense because, as I said, they've just got too many swing players in the middle that are sort of his role. Obviously, Jack Steele is very good and defensive.
Yes.
But, as I said, Nasai Wanganeen-Miller is probably providing the offense that St Kilda sort of need at the moment because, again, like St Kilda have okay defensive systems. It's just their offensive system that can break apart. So Ross is probably looking to tinker that. And as I said, Jack Steele probably has the inkling that he might get a bit lost in the shuffle and maybe get the most out of his twilight, I guess, of his career at another club.
Yeah, because I think he's 31 at the moment.
Could be.
So he's definitely got a couple of years left in him if his body holds up, of course.
Yeah. Well, a couple of years at peak. And
yes.
then just,
But yeah, he might do something similar to, I guess, what Chris Newman did at Richmond when he handed over to Trent Cotchin.
Yeah.
Where he just kind of let a younger player take the reins. Granted, Trent was maybe a little too young at the time.
Yeah.
But take the reins of that leadership and just be like a mentor figure.
Yeah.
Whilst just providing a role on field.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard until we get the end of, I think Wednesday is the end of the trade period.
I believe so. I think we've got a couple of days left to go.
So
it's Monday as of recording this, just for a note, but it should be normal by now.
Yeah, so as I said, we'll know how, to frame this sort of captaincy shifts after that happen. But I think either way, St Kilda will be, I'm not sure if they'll be fine, but I think St Kilda's list issues are in other areas, to be honest. Like as I said, it's going to be, are they getting these people to just support a forward line that's fairly bare bones, or are they going to have enough to just get those goals from other areas? Captaincy, I think they've got a lot of young players that look to have their heads screwed on that they could, maybe eke some leadership out of, even if it does require a stepping stone captain like Sinclair or Wilkie.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, next on our list, giant Josh Kelly has opted for surgery and will miss most of 2026.
Yeah, this one's tough because, you sort of forget how young Kelly is because he was pretty young when GWS hit their peak and he was playing pretty well. So I always think he's like a 32-year-old, but he's actually just hit 30. But yeah, as I said, he's always had a few injury concerns, especially in the last couple of years. And, this is one of those things that, it's it's hard to make this decision when you're 30. But if it's you go for it, you do it because it may just improve your quality of life after football, which is something you always got to consider.
Yes.
And B, it may just give him a fresher run for those last couple of years, even though maybe he might be having talks with Kingsley on the coaching stuff saying, hey, get your surgery. Maybe we'll just play you in a reduced role, but we want your leadership because obviously GWS is still believing they'll be believing they can make finals next year and then after that. So I think this might be a year where they're like, okay, Josh Kelly, we're going to still want you around the club. We're still going to want you to train the next midfield, which we've said in previous podcasts isn't the best side of GWS.
Yeah, agreed.
They're a very leaky midfield. They can't generate inside 50s as much as I'd want to. So if Josh Kelly can sit with the next core midfield group and, just go to the future, then when he comes back, he can just fit in whatever role is sort of required. So, I think it's going to be a shame to see him miss. I hope that this isn't the end of his career because I think there's a bit more that it can get, and it would be very upsetting if they made it back again, because it is sort of nice because yeah, like for the Giants, the grand final that they obviously got with Richmond, like
Yes.
they got there early. They were still a good team. They had some problems, but you know what I mean? It was like I think a lot of them were very shattered after that grand final. So I think a few of those players that were there for it want to get back to that big dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is going to be. I don't think it'll be too difficult for GWS to recover from because they have played most of the season without him, and they're already looking at someone to kind of fill his role in the time being. That being Clayton Oliver. That's not official. That like he has requested a trade to GWS as of yet, but that's kind of where everything is kind of leaning towards.
Yeah.
So they'll at least have someone of his talent to fill that role. But whether when he comes back from his injury and his recovery, whether he'll be able to slot back in or they'll have to move some more pieces around. Well, maybe they put Toby Green further forward.
Yeah.
Kelly and Oliver.
And also, as I said, with the retirement of Cam Ward, is like maybe he'll play a purely wing role, which he can play. Like he used to be more of an outside than inside midfielder back when they had that stack list of like Canelio, Taranto. I don't think it was early Tom Green, but there was another couple of players.
Hopper was in there still.
Yeah, Hopper too. So yeah, as I said, he knows both aspects of the midfield, so he'll find a place. It's just how best to utilize that.
Yeah. All right. Next on the agenda, Jack Silvani officially leaves Carlton for St Kilda.
Yes. The Soss reunited.
Father and son.
Father and son, obviously, if you don't know. Stick Silvani, Stephen Silvani? Yeah. Is the list manager of St Kilda.
Yes.
Has been for years. There were talks about he doesn't want anything to do with his son because like obviously he was part of wasn't even part of Carl. Anyway, it's something, but they're back together. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting because I think the biggest thing about Jack Silvani is the big question is whether his body's right. Because honestly, this could be one of those things where Carlton might get a steal out of this. Because they have, as compensation, an end of first round selection, currently pick 19.
Yes.
As of the old tweet, I don't know if that's changed. But honestly, it's like, I mean, I get it. Like, it's worthy of that when he's on the park. But I think it's unsure whether he will continue on. And I think, for St Kilda, like, I think it's worthy taking a punt on that sort of player because, again, they need backup, backman as much as they do forward options. So for him, he's able to play both. This is just a no-brainer, really. St Kilda want a bit of... I think St Kilda want to push a bit more. Because for the last few years they've had like this sort of middling list, whereas Carlton, I think, from what we're sort of gathering, are in a semi-rebuild. So
I think at this point they are, and like as much as with the talent that they have, and especially when you have someone like Cripps, who's one of those players where I feel like he's always deserved to play finals.
Yeah,
and at this point, he's probably never going to make it unless he leaves Carlton.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks for them, but I mean, when the players want better opportunities, the other teams are going to come calling, and St Kilda has kind of picked Carlton apart with a couple of players.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, as I said, like Carlton not going to match Silvani at this point. Like as I said, if St Kilda are even offering him like above average, which again hard to tell, unless the contract gets leaked. Like, A, Silvani's going to take because he knows about his body, and B, Carlton not going to match it because they know about his body. But yeah, as I said, for St Kilda, like, list managers are very good. They'll just front or back end the contract depending on what other contracts are. So they know how they can overplay players without it actually affecting their salary cap. So
yeah,
when I say overpay, I mean, like, literally, like, by, by their average output.
Yes, that's right. Next on the list, veteran Hawk James Warple, the Warpeter, has joined Geelong.
Yeah, sort of a it's so weird. It's like it's a very Geelong sort of, well, not trade. Obviously, this is free agency, but yeah, as I said, it just makes sense. Like Geelong tend to bolster their midfield by just keep on blooding in players that have sort of fallen out of favor with their club, maybe lost in the shuffle. I mean, like, it wouldn't surprise me if Tom Mitchell was a cat in 2026 at this rate, but yeah, as I said, for the Warpedo, obviously lost in that shuffle of Hawthorn's midfield after being one of the was he a mid-season pickup? I got a feeling he might have been, but either way,
Can't remember actually.
you know, as I said, still solid. You know, just I think you know Geelong just like an extra accumulator because obviously they've got someone like Bailey Smith, but I think they prefer him with the handball receive rather than the ground ball get.
Yeah.
So you know, as I said, James Warple adds a bit on that midfield. In that rotation. You know, he's a mixture of outside and inside, as in like he can do stuff with the handball receive himself, but I think yeah, as I said, he hasn't quite had that lethality in that last couple of years. So I think Geelong just going in there, providing what he does, and even if it's like a, you know, a Jack Bowes type role, obviously playing a bit different, but you know what I mean, like just, you know, using the skill set that's good, but in a different capacity, just to confirm your spot in the team. I think he'll enjoy it there, and you know, as I said, might help Geelong recover from what was a bit of a disappointing grand final by adding just another piece to the equation.
Yeah, I think this is a move that will benefit them greatly, especially again as Danger continues to get older. They'll definitely need someone to kind of fit into his position, especially when he rotates forward.
Yeah,
exactly. Still play that
exactly.
midfield role. And yeah, the Warpedo has always been very talented. He's always worked hard at it.
Yeah.
Even when there are players like Jai Newcomb for Hawthorn that have kind of been in the next tier up in that midfield.
Yeah. I mean,
but
even the next level, like Josh Ward, I think is at a really good season.
a great
Connor
pick.
Nash as well. I think, you know, like I think it just shows like for Hawthorn, like I know they're not dominating midfield stats, but
No.
how much they were able to get from their
Their
players.
midfield across this season has probably been their weakest part. As then I think the injury to Will Day definitely hasn't helped because he's always meant to be that star midfielder for them and just couldn't get on the park. But yeah, you look at this move and it definitely kind of brings them down a little bit. But if they get that, the big piece that they really need, and they're still working on that, is merit.
Yeah.
Like, they need that kind of midfielder.
Exactly. As I said, it's the going to be the merit raffle for the next couple of days, and you know, all eyes will be on it, but we won't be able to tell you much about that till next week. But it will shift the perceptions of a lot of preseason things. But I think just securing that depth for a lot of these top teams, you know, is very good. And obviously Geelong. I should say this is a unrestricted free agency, so there's no compensation.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I said, just a veteran talent looking to extend their career, and Geelong looking to eke out that tiny bit that will secure them to the next step because they are a very balanced team. They don't need much to be considered competing unless like a stack of injuries happen.
Correct. Next on the list, Tom de Koning joins St Kilda from Carlton.
Yeah, probably the biggest free agency move, I would say.
At the moment, yeah, because free agency is still technically going alongside the trade period.
But yeah, as I said, Tom de Koning, you know, played a fair bit for Carlton. Honestly, his versatility, you know, as a ruckman, as a forward, has helped skyrocket his profile. He's very inventive with his tap work. I think that's the biggest thing that sort of has gone from like a very reasonable player to the player that you want to get. And like you've probably heard in 2025 during the season, so much talk about where he was going. And yeah, he ends up going to St Kilda, which is very interesting. Obviously, the dynamic with Rowan Marshall, who knows how to play forward, but I wouldn't exactly say that's like optimal.
The way that I can maybe see this working is Marshall maybe still being the number one ruckman and then using TDK as the floater around the ground more so.
Yeah, he knows. I mean, hell, maybe he'll do a Mark Blitzarves and just be the extra midfielder. Like, he's not that bad at the clearances and is pretty good with ball on the ground. That's TDK, not Marshall. I'd say Marshall's the opposite.
Oh, very true.
Yeah, as I said, so it's going to be interesting, but obviously TDK. There's not much more that hasn't been said. Maybe the only thing that you might say is like, oh, technically, like his output isn't as much, like, isn't maybe that worthy of the hype that's sort of been around him as a trade acquisition, but I still think this is so much more positive for St Kilda. I'll say like this for St Kilda is probably even more important than Jack Silvani, and I think Jack Silvani would be the trade target for St Kilda anyway. So, as I said, it just adds that extra flexibility up forward, helps Max King when he returns, because even if it's Marshall, even if it's TDK, who knows who's there, but it's just extra support. And it's just, St Kilda trying to be a balanced team because, as I said, all this talk about trade acquisitions and all that, they've still been building up some okay depth players. We saw, is it Maxwell?
Maxwell, Marcus Windhager's been really good. Cooper Sharman's been decent.
Yeah, and, a few others.
Obviously, we got Naz, Mitch Owens, he had a bit of a lull this season, but he's also been out with injury, to be fair. But we'll steadily get back up there again.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, as I said, so it's going to make Saints probably the hardest team to predict after this preseason. But, as for them, they've got their big pick. I reckon a few Melbourneite punters might have them in the 8 now. I don't know if it's worth the hype, but I still think it's heading in the right direction all the same.
Yeah, I agree. Next on the list, former Sydney player Robbie Fox has joined Tasmania for their VFL team.
Yeah, so, this is a very interesting one. I think honestly, it's like, I feel like we've only ever talked about Robbie Fox, man. It's like we've talked about Sydney having problems with their depth. But
he's always been, he has been very much a fill player.
Yeah, exactly. But as I said, I think this is sort of the right move, as I said, someone who's been in the system. Obviously, you're not going to get too many people this early, to dedicate themselves to playing in the reserve side. And as for Robbie Fox, it's a chance to maybe get another opportunity for AFL football. He has a Tasmania connection. So, you know what I mean? It's like, you could do a lot worse. And as I said, like, you always want a chance to see a player, find new home and flourish. I don't think you'll, come into the inaugural Tasmania AFL side, if they have one, and be captain, but he will help flesh out that thing. And, again, I hate the Suns being a barometer of how not to start a AFL franchise, but you know what I mean? Like, help them go towards more of a GWS start than a Gold Coast Suns start.
Yeah, no, I think this is a very good move, especially because he is a Tassie boy. The honour to get to play for your home side.
Yeah.
And it's similar to what Walpole said when he moved to Geelong, because he's from Geelong.
Yeah.
So it's just the honour to get to represent basically your home team.
Yeah.
Technically it's the national stage because there are national teams in the VFL at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, like, even if Tasmania didn't go for it as an AFL side, like, Robbie Fox will be chuffed that he got to play for a team representing him state. So...
Yeah, absolutely. And so these sorts of players that will end up joining, as we continue to go through this off season, more players will join Tassie's VFL team.
Yeah.
Yes, the honour to be part of technically that inaugural Tassie team, and also just get to really help build up a brand new team, a brand new unit of talent in this system is nothing to be scoffed at.
No, exactly. And, it's said, like, even talking about Sam Day earlier, as I said, it is really tough to be start of the expansion side, like, not just as, like, a journeyman player like Robbie Fox is, but, as a young kid and all that. So, like, the more you're able to help other players go through that and, help their AFL dream, probably get the maximum amount of, output that they possibly can, is, something to be proud of. And, as I said, he'll get to be a bit of a mentor.
Mm.
You know, as I said, I don't know how good he is leadership or all that, but you know, as I said, it's all about setting those standards early. It's all about teaching the youngsters how to train when there's so many young players in a new club, and hopefully Robbie Fox is able to do that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully, it's a very good thing for both him and the club. Next on our list, let me scroll through here. Sam Draper officially joins the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, and this again, it's probably the same amount. Like the Steven Silvani thing is like probably Sandra has a lot more upside, but it's like, well, is he gonna keep his body right? But any other team, and you're like, well, this might be a risky move, but he's going to Brisbane. Like
He's taking the Big O spot.
he's taking the Big O spot. Like as I said, as I said, it's that flexibility because as I said, like they have four who still could take like main ruck, and I think Sam Draper actually likes that split.
Yeah,
Because it's not that defensively accountable. Like that's the biggest knock on his game.
yeah, correct.
But you know what I mean? Like if he only takes like if it's I know it won't be a 50-50 split, but you know, like he'll be able to go forward. Fort probably just spends a bit more time on the bench. I think Fort will probably be like a 70% time on ground sort of player for next year. But yeah, as I said, so Sam Draper, you know, as I said, he'll take the forward hit outs, he'll take a few centre bounces, and just provide that spark. And as I said, yeah, it's pretty crazy how Brisbane are sort of bolstering their side. Honestly, as I said, you know, this can be like sort of talked about is like how AFL sort of approach parity and all that sort of thing. But you know, as I said, I don't think this move will be like guaranteeing Brisbane to be like back to back to back. You know, as I said.
No, there's never a guarantee in that regard. But I mean, when you look at the players that they are actually picking up,
yeah,
it really does bolster the areas that, because of retirements or injury, that they have lacked in a little bit. Like, granted, you know, you got Logan Morris and Ty Gallup, which is fantastic prop forward as young players. But then you bring in Oscar Allen, which we'll talk about properly in a minute.
Yeah.
Like, that changes the dynamic so much more because he's basically the player that was meant to take over Danaher's role.
Exactly. And, you know, as I said, I think this is just like, it's going to guarantee that Brisbane are at least a lethal forward half team for another year. Like, as I said.
And Draper will definitely have a hand in that as well, being so flexible.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you could argue maybe with some of the other losses that they've actually had, you know, they might lose a bit of defensive accountability. But there's no doubt, like, they will at least, you know, they might be like a better version of the Western Bulldogs this year where they just like dominate scoring, but maybe be a bit looser in defense, even though they still have a lot of talent down there. You know, as I said, it's one of those things I'm sure when I'm writing the team previews, probably next year, it will be like trying to find those weaknesses, you know, being very, you know, pulling hairs, splitting hairs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of splitting hairs, let's touch on a Port Adelaide subject now with Jacob Werr from GWS joining the Power.
Splitting wares. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so yeah, very fringe player. Look, not going to be the most exciting free agency story. But for Port Adelaide, he's sort of, I think he's from Adelaide. Yeah, would be West Torrens. Yeah,
yes,
Torrens River. Yeah. So, yeah, there's not much to say about him. He's just an okay outside player in a team that had a lot of really good outside players. Whereas Port really struggled in transition at times. So I'm not sure if he'll make best 22. But honestly, I think, you know, for depth, you know, as I said, it allows them to play Miles Bergman, you know, more defensive at times, you know, when they had all those small defender troubles last year. That having someone like Ware means that you play him consistently while Bergman fills in the injuries. And yeah, as I said, probably depth, but at the same time, it is like a role where Port Adelaide just need more bodies. And it's a body with experience, 27 years old. Pick him up as an unrestricted free agency, so probably not paying that much for him as well, because, you know, as I said, is not really a player that many people are going to target. And it's like, okay, we have a fit for you. Yeah, welcome in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good move for both sides. Again, Jacob Rose has always been the kind of fringe player for GWS as
Yeah.
well, and being able to give a player like that, who we know has some good talent, in a side that is definitely needs a little bit more talented bodies around that midfield, of course. It's definitely a good pickup, especially when you have someone like Willie Rioli retiring as well, and other players moving on.
Yeah, as I said, I think this is like the sort of move that I think Port fans sort of want because it's like sort of an indication that they're not quite going full rebuild, and I think a lot of people want Josh Carr to just go ham. I mean, obviously, people want Josh Carr to like go in there, win a final on his first year, and like justify all the Hinkley reservations. But you know what I mean. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But as I said, I think there is an inkling of system in the off-season moves that Port have done, which we haven't really talked about, but they've basically like flushed out most of their assistants. I think only Matthew Loeb is the only person, weirdly enough, there as the ruck coach that was there in the Hinkley era. So, yeah, as I said, I think a lot of people are like, okay, he wants to have his own system and setting up a system. Like, it may take time. I don't think Port's going to be like the most powerful team of the start of 2026.
Yeah,
But I think they're a team that will still be wanting to push finals at the end of 2026, or at least basing their overarching, future with that in mind.
agreed. And like you have plenty of talent on there to do it. It's
Yeah.
just one not having as many injuries and having an actual decent game plan.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, the Hinkley forward line structure was one of the most painful things about him. Like, I love Hinkley. I'll defend him. I still think he was an overall positive for Port Adelaide. I cringe at some of the people. I remember seeing one post and I was like, man, like, it's like, oh, Hinkley sort of destroyed the culture of Port Adelaide. And I'm like, man, we were having toughs on the field. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, Port Adelaide, especially, like, had some really good cultures, especially if you count the Sandford eras. But
Mm.
like, it's hard
Yeah,
in like a professional league to be that good. To win a grand final, to be like consistently on the ball, and like you can be consistently on the ball and still be a bit mid. Like, I've had no problem with Port's culture. It's just like, as I said, I think game plan is like the biggest thing that they've sort of needed, and this is like an indication. Well, as I said, a lot of things are an indication, but yeah, as I said, Jacob Ware fills in a void, and I'm glad that they've identified that that's the problem.
yeah,
Basically.
agreed. Next on our list, young Melbourne player Charlie Spargo joins North Melbourne.
Yeah, honestly, very good pickup. I think the biggest thing for the Kangaroos is because of the way they've drafted, they've got a few good older players. They've got a few players that are developing, but they haven't really got enough good 25 to 28-year-olds. Like a lot of the ones that they have, like Dylan Stevens, jury's still out on Zach Fisher, whether that was a good trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, as I said, a lot of the best things about the Roos have been their forward line. But again, I think the best games have been when the forward connection's been there, and Charlie Spargo is one of those players that is a very good connector. Obviously struggled while the Melbourne Demons forward line has been absolute arse tier.
Yeah,
Which is funny, like North Melbourne being an upgrade, you never really think that with the way that they've been, but in this specific context, yeah, for Charlie Spargo's game, I think he'll do a lot better at North Melbourne than he would in Melbourne while they're rebuilding that. So it'll be interesting. I reckon it's a really good pickup. I've begun because this was a trade or free agency.
this was free agency.
Okay. So yeah, as I said, I'll have to wait till it comes back up to what compensation they got for him. But yeah, as I said, obviously decent player, should be good there. And as I said, Melbourne to North Melbourne's not like a big lifestyle change, is it? Might have to like stop for one extra stop if he catches the train.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, but I don't know. Spargo is definitely a huge get for North. He fills that kind of role again, like that extra experience, and especially the fact that he's got that from being in a premiership
Yeah,
in
true.
2021, and then just having that experience alongside a lot of it. There was a lot of veteran talent at Melbourne that has probably really helped mentor him a little bit, and now he's able to bring that to a team that needs that veteran presence a bit more, that extra experience a little bit more.
I never really know, like, when like a player wins a premiership early and then switch club, I never really know, like, honestly, I don't think you just know what's going on in your career when you're like 21 or 22. Like, it's like, I don't know if winning a premiership actually gets you, but as I said, in terms of standards, in terms of, start, because like 25-year-old is when you start to determine a lot of your career, because, you've been in the system, you've had a few preseasons, you've had a few seasons, you've probably had a bit of variation of going up and down in the ladder. So, well, in this case, obviously he has, because, Melbourne last 2 years haven't been that great. So, yeah, I think, as I said, even that experience, even if it's not like a leadership quality sort of person, like he'll be able to add a bit, even outside of his football talents.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next on our list, former Gold Coast Sun, Sam Flanders, officially joins St Kilda as well.
Yeah, so this one's interesting because Sam Flanders had an absolutely fantastic 2024. People were thinking he's All-Australian. I think he was the leading possession getter in the league, wasn't he?
He was definitely up there.
Yeah, I think he was averaging like 31 by memory. And then Gold Coast, I don't know if they listen to the Coast Case podcast, but I did say, like, you need to change up your midfield. It's not working despite the numbers. And Dimmer, he listened, So, unfortunately, someone has to get lost in the shuffle. I actually thought it was going to be Noah Anderson, so that's where I can't claim 100% credit. But Sam Flanders turned into outside, and they just couldn't find a spot for him. Obviously, with the halfbackers they brought in, he couldn't go back to his normal role because he was a halfback flanker for the start of his career. So this move makes sense because, as I said, they're looking to put Naz as a pure midfielder. If he was in that halfback role, well, someone who is really good with the cheap uncontested disposals, Sam Flanders. And, as I said, it starts to make that back half game, instead of just long kicks going to nowhere, hopefully a bit more link up that will improve their back half scoring rate.
Yeah, he's going to fill a gap that they've massively been having issues in. And I said this earlier this year, actually, about Naz, and when he was playing off of halfback, how his disposal usage when kicking downfield just wasn't that great.
Yeah, I think that was more St Kilda's system because, as I said, that's just how they've been playing for the last few years. And,
True.
I don't know if that's how, like, Ross Lyon, like, approaches aggressive football. And, at times it did work. But, yeah, as I said, they just need more. I think not so much outside marking, but, like, outside to inside movement. And as I said, if Naz is that person that can float around the midfield connecting up chains, Flanders is that person who could probably reliably enough hit targets, kick balls to advantage long, because I still think they're going to play that long play style. Flanders is that sort of player. I would say that's probably my biggest criticism of him in that midfield is there was a lot of dunk kicks in the forward line, but I think territory in the back half is a lot more important than, getting those direct kicks in the forward half. So, yeah, Sam Flanders makes sense. I'll say allows a bit more versatility for Sinclair as well,
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much going to just only add to St Kilda's structure, and it's just something that they've been needing for forever. And hopefully it changes the way that Ross Lyon, especially Ross Lyon, looks at how they move the ball off halfback, because it just was never really working until they gave it to someone who could actually run.
It was never really working last year, as I said. I think they had like a weird drop in the bucket with 2024 when they had to change up their game plan. They sort of changed their game style, but, as I said, as other teams got better in the back half, I think conversely, teams got better at defending back half movements, and that's where the Saints really struggled this year. They weren't scoring as much as they did the year before, scoring off back half, and yeah, as I said, they just went through very dry periods of scoring at times.
Yeah. Like there were a ton of games there where they just would not do anything for most of the game, but then all of a sudden kick like a bag of 4 or 5 in the last.
Yeah, quarter. Exactly. It's like, you look at some of this going like, oh, they've got 100 points or whatever, but like they had a lot of quarters of just like nothing. So
and being able to have a little bit more of that balance throughout the game rather than just in periods at like the start of the game and at the end of the game.
That's what like
that's
our
kind of
biggest
what they're looking
problem
for.
with St Kilda is. It's just been the consistency and why this inconsistency is happening. And I think a lot of it has been like that very territory first style of football, but not having that talent in the forward half to warrant that. You know, they're not going to lock it in. Their forward target marking wise are pretty mid. So as I said, they might still develop. A lot of those are young, but you know, as I said, they need other players to support that a bit more. And Sam Flanders is one of those that, you know, maybe not by him, but the flexibility that allows to St Kilda plus is just going to be a lot better football than he was playing in 2025 at Gold Coast. It was one of the biggest shames in an otherwise really good Gold Coast season.
Oh yeah,
was the weirdness of Sam Flanders' role.
all right, jumping over to our next bit, and it's the start of the trade period news, thankfully. And our first one is Liam Reedy is officially traded from Fremantle to Carlton alongside picks 53 and 71, and Carlton send over pick 50 and pick 68 to Fremantle.
Yeah, honestly, it's a trade where it feels like, okay, give me a pack of chips and I'll give you Liam Reedy. Like, oh, it's one of those things where, yeah, as I said, Fremantle just had 4 ruckmen. A couple of them are very injured, but yeah, they just like, okay, we're gonna. I think it's Keeper Simpson, the one they sort of have in the works.
I think so.
So Liam Reedy getting a bit older, hasn't really developed much, and Carlton need a backup ruckman because TDK is going.
Yep.
Probably, you know, as I said, may make the park. So in the essence, it's probably a good trade for Carlton because they don't give up much for a player that might make the field. But yeah, as I said, not really much to do about anything. Like, as I said, I will say, as much as I have joked, like I said, like, oh, Lloyd Meek, like, you know, he was a very trying ruckman at Fremantle, and then he just like blossomed when I thought he was just never going to be AFL standard. So you never know, but I think even Liam Reedy was probably a step down from Lloyd Meek.
Yeah. I mean, especially even then when you just look at Fremantle as a whole, and they've got, you know, Luke Jackson and
Sean
Darcy kind of taking the reins in that ruck position. It's really hard to try to break into that when those two are there as well.
Yeah, the only reason to break in is when you know, Darcy is injured. So like if Darcy and Jackson are injured, like Fremantle are just gonna have like so much more problems. You know what I mean? I don't think they'll be able to function with the loss of both. But again, that would be very unlucky. But you know, Sean Darcy, you know, when he goes out, you know, maybe they play Cooper Simpson, maybe they just stick with Voss. You know what I mean? They've got options for a pinch hitter. I don't think they really need to go that low into their depth for Liam Reedy, who again could even be considered the 5th option if you count Voss. So
yeah, that's true.
You know.
Next on the list is another trade, of course, with Malcolm Roses going from the Gold Coast Suns to the Sydney Swans, as well as pick 62, and Sydney will give up pick 51 and pick 69.
Yeah, again, Malcolm Roses Jr. Showed glimpses. So you know what I mean? It's not a bad pickup, but yeah, as I said, depth for small forward. We saw how much they hurt without Papley.
Yep.
It's sort of creative. But yeah, as I said, there's just other players for Gold Coast that they're probably going to be putting more time into. Jake Rogers probably being the main one. He didn't always make the side this year. So yeah, Malcolm Roses Jr. is just like next cab off the rank. You know, okay, a little live wire. Should play a few games this year, depending on what they do with Papley, how fit he's going to be. But yeah, as I said, I wouldn't say best 22, but essentially you're not trading that much for him. It's just a depth requirement, and they just need to work out the picks to make it happen, which ended up not really being that much.
Yeah, I don't think any of these picks will really amount to much in the draft itself. I mean, pick 50 and 53 probably will. There is occasionally a diamond in a rough down that far.
Yeah, but I think like you tend to know because I think like a lot of the late picks is like, well, there's this player like in state that's got a bit of okay possibility. But you know, as I said, like Melbourne team is a bit harder because obviously you got more competition, but you're like, okay, here are the players that will just like pick up if we have a pick late for them and they haven't been picked up already. So as I said, that's really your late picks, and that's still a crapshoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
it really is.
unless you're Geelong, who have sort of rigged the wheel for the last 10 years, we don't know how they do it. Maybe witchcraft, who knows? But yeah, as I said, I think they'll just prefer the safe depth of Marcus Reza Jr. over a speculative pick.
Yeah, I think so. Next on the list, Judd McVie is traded to Fremantle for pick 23 to Melbourne.
Yeah, oh, that's such a sad doggo. Sorry if you weren't prepared for crying doggo. But yeah, Judd McVie. I remember last year talking about him. I remember doing like the important players for Melbourne, and I've actually rated Jack McVie up there, even though it was like his second, maybe third year in the club.
Yeah, he's still very, very, very young.
Yeah, and he's just a really solid outside-ish user. Very versatile, could play defense on that half-back line. Freo had a lot of talent back there, but they didn't quite put it back together on the half-back line. Chapman maybe had a bit of a down year. Walker was very in and out the side, so it's one of those things where I think he'll find a role on the wing. But if their back half isn't accountable, they're able to shuffle things around. I think he will be best 22. I rate him fairly highly. But yeah, as I said, it's going to be one of those things where, honestly, I think for pick 23, it's probably right, but I probably rate him. I wouldn't trade him for more than a pick 23 of his career, but I think, like, for Freo fans, like, this is a very good time to pick up a player like Judd McVie,
Yes.
who has a bit of upside, while he's still a reasonable pickup.
Yeah, I agree. He's still got so much upside, and as much as, you know, would have been cool to see Melbourne utilize him a bit more, I think with the new coach coming in, they're trying to get rid of a lot of their veteran talent and kind of go into a rebuild.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a good time to maybe try and scrounge up some picks for this year's draft and try and cultivate a new batch of players instead.
Yeah, I just think, you know, as I said, again, it's sort of like the problem with who was I talking about? Charlie Spargo. Where it said like they had some really talented link up players, but just nothing to link up to. So I think Judd McVie, with the way that Freo, with them being so toll centric, just a more reliable A, move the ball, and B, hit up those targets. Because again, Freo didn't actually have that many marks inside 50 and all that for how their talents were. They were just very good at converting. So if they can get a few more shot generations and score involvements, which Judd McVie is good at, they'll be a lot better off for it. So that's sort of the upside you're looking for there. But, you know, as I said, I'm talking about offensively, and he's still a defensively accountable player as well. So, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think his, like, skills are pretty, you know, like, I don't think this is like you're picking up someone who can absolutely break the game, but you're picking up a very big team positive player with Jack McVie. I highly rate this move.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a huge upside for Freo. Next on the list, West Coast are given pick 2 as compensation for Oscar Allen.
Yes. Look, I mean, it's one of the biggest and more controversial moves, I would say. Oscar Allen being the captain, all of the talk this year, unfortunately, whether it was leaked, whether it was sort of, you know, just found out that, you know, as I said, talking to other players, obviously had that conversation with Sam Mitchell, which ironically, he didn't even go to Hawthorn in the end. But yeah, goes to Brisbane, and it's just like, what a pickup, you know, as I said. Oscar Allen, you know, he's been a bit quiet over the last 2 years due to injury, but there was no underestimating that talent when he initially went on the park. Like, he was the only glimmer of hope in that, like, 2021 West Coast side.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, like, when they had the veterans, but they just had, like, next to no depth. Like, he was the one young player that was like, okay, maybe there's a future here. And yeah, that unfortunately goes. I mean, honestly, I don't know how West Coast fans would feel about it, but I think they would feel a bit dirty. But at the same time, that's just modern football. Oscar Allen, fantastic mark. Reasonable set shot. I think his accuracy is actually flagged a tiny bit, but yeah, we even saw a versatility as a defender. So yeah, I said overall, like there's so much that they can offer for Brisbane. And as for Brisbane, it's just like, yeah, I mean, we've discussed this before. It's like, yeah, it like seems ridiculous that they're able to pick up, but I think people say, oh, free agency is broken, but it's like I think this comes from like the father-son draft because again, they're able to pick up both the Ashcrofts. They're on their rookie contracts, and they've already got players like a two-time um, Jack Ayres medal player.
Yeah.
On their side who's not even in their third year. I think this problem is when you look at this like father sons, it's not just the ability to pick them up. It's that they're cheap rookie contracts. And that they're probably going to have a good output early, so that makes them load up in this thing. Obviously, they'll have to work out their list in a couple of years' time, but as I said, it makes the three-peat all the more possible.
Yeah, it's I definitely think Brisbane kind of got away scot-free with this deal. Like they didn't have to give up anything at all to get Australia
free agency,
But the pick two conversation does feel a little bit dirty as well. Like I know you're considering West Coast literally just got handed like a support package with 4 extra rookie slots. Like I get that they're still a struggling club despite only winning a premiership 7 years ago.
Yeah,
it's like what more could you really get from the AFL until you have to kind of stand on your own?
I think pick 2 is like reasonable from like outputs and the way they calculate it. Like if you've seen some of the pick, like there's been a lot of inflation. Like they used to give a lot lower picks, but it's just slowly crept up during the year. And I think for key forward in their prime, I think pick 2 is actually fairly reasonable. But again, we're talking about comparative to other players. Whether as I said, you should just be getting a pick 2. I would still always take Oscar Allen over pick 2. Like there's no doubt in my mind. But you know what I mean? It just makes the draft so much more complicated these days.
Yeah, it does. Oh well. It is what it is in that case. Next on our list, St Kilda trades Max Heath to North Melbourne for our very first future pick 2027 when North Melbourne are winning the premiership, maybe.
So honestly, I think this is really just because North Melbourne's done a lot of trade and they're like, oh, well, I don't think they have any late round picks this year. So they just have to dip into the year after to get a bit of backup, forward backup, ruckman, again, Josh Darling, Jack Darling, you know what I mean? It's like, he might not be there. So it's probably like, again, when 2027 rocks up, he'll probably be like the backup tall forward. If not, maybe rucking if Tristan Cherry goes down. Honestly, St Kilda fans might know a bit about Max Heath, but honestly, like, yeah, I've watched a few games.
He's serviceable, but he's still very young, very raw.
Yeah, it's still like a net negative having on the park, but it's just like that potential. But again, like, I think with the versatility of Caminiti and, them going a bit more smaller minded in the forward line, to play like Mac Heath is just like a bit of an awkward fit, so he just finds a new home.
Yeah, I completely agree that I think St Kilda's depth won't get hit too bad for this, especially because they brought in like a multitude of players now, especially from this season. Like they've already brought in 3, so I think they'll be fine in that regard. But I think this will genuinely be a good thing to Melbourne. Again, like they're rebuilding now. They've got a new coach. The new game plan is going to come in.
North Melbourne.
Is it North Melbourne or is it Melbourne?
North Melbourne.
Oh, it says Melbourne here.
Oh, really?
I might have.
You might have. Yeah.
I wrote it wrong.
So kind of Melbourne. Bad. Okay, so yeah, I meant forward depth. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Anyway, so just take back what I said about Jack Darling.
We can add that to maybe. Not Disco Turner, is defender. The one up forward.
Yeah, I know Van Royen.
No, because Van Royen's still quite young. I was more thinking the better Ash Johnson. No,
Melksham.
Melksham, yeah, Melksham kind of fit that mold there.
He's playing as a tall forward. yeah, I mean, yeah, Melbourne are also playing a bit small ball, but they probably need his marking target. So yeah, Maxi, I don't know if he'll play a game next year, but I mean, he's a player.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next on the list, Collingwood trade Brody Myercheck and pick 71 to Melbourne for pick 61 and a 2026 round 3 pick.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, again, Collingwood are one of those teams where their forward line just feels like it shouldn't function, but it sort of just does. And, like, for years, it's been off the back of Brody Myercheck. This year, he doesn't quite get his body right, but they seem still to get afloat. But, as I said, I mean, for Melbourne, obviously, this is just a decent pickup. Like, they need some sort of stopgap to prevent than just going in a loop of forwards not developing at their club. Because I don't think this is a fix that, future draft, future tolls will fix. So they at least need some sort of player. They get that fairly reasonable. Like, honestly, I could still see Brody Myercheck having a 40-goal season at Melbourne, which is like what they desperately need. And they didn't give up that much for it. I think that's the interesting thing for Collingwood is like, is this going to be enough to really change our outlook on them? Probably not, but it makes it a bit iffy. How they look this year.
I think it's more the fact that Myercheck was one of the few players that was very in and out this season with injury.
Yeah.
So that allowed Collingwood's forward line to kind of be a bit more makeshift and a bit more flexible in how they operated. Again, like, granted, as much as Membry is a veteran and only has maybe a year or two left in his system, like, he has done some fairly good work down there.
Yeah.
Oscar McInerney, before he retired, was doing some fairly solid work as well. And they've got a bunch of other players now that they're slowly bringing in and slowly introducing more. Firstly, to come a few of their younger players as well that they've recruited over the past couple of years. That are just able to kind of fit into that system almost immediately.
Yeah, and we know Collingwood, they're a pressure forward line. Like, they rely a lot on tackles inside 50, contests on the ground ball, stoppages. So, like, this, it doesn't seem too bad. They just need to make sure they still have that marking target. Because, like, this could be like, not a per game literal sense, but this will probably drop their goal output by maybe 1 per game, if not a bit more. So they need to just make that up one time to stay a top 4 threat, but I don't think this changes their overall finals ability. They'll still be pushing, probably, as far as we know.
Yeah, I think they'll probably still end up being contenders in 2026. All right, next on the list is actually a 3-way trade, which is going to be a little bit hard to explain, so I will kind of put it through. So Port have received Corey Durden from Carlton and a 2026 second round pick. Gold Coast have received pick 29, which I believe came from Port. And then Carlton received Ben Ainsworth from the Suns and pick 67.
Yeah, I'm really not sure how Port got so much out of this when you look at it. Like, I know Corey Durden, he's just like literally a player. Like, he's a bit of forward line depth. Maybe an outside player. Yeah, as I said, I've got Cullen supporting maker, and I've definitely made a few Corey Durden jokes in the past. No offense to Corey, like, he's just a player trying to make his way into the AFL. He's very poor based, like, just like, we need like a stopgap small forward. He's not that great, looking for another club. Frankie Evans goes for a few years, drops out. Not Wiley Buzzer. Who was the other one? Anyway, Jed McEntee, all those sort of players. But Corey Durden, bit of depth. Villarreal's gone. Sort of need it, whatever. And then just randomly a second round pick for pick 29. Like, they basically, you trade. Well, honestly, it's really just you get Corey Durden for going like a few spots down in the second round. Is okay.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a serviceable player, as we saw at Carlton. He just tried to fill roles that he was able to with all the injuries that they had. Managed to score some pretty good goals over his career. He was also very much slotted back into defense when they needed him to. He was able to learn both ends of the ground. And I think that is something that Port can probably get out of him a fair bit as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he actually played. I think that was Sam Durden, but I always get the Durdens mixed up. So, Anyway, so the other half of that is obviously
Ben
I've
Ains?
sort of broken up. The Ben Ainsworth. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one because Ainsworth is just one of those players that, again, like, is always a bit more upside more than actual potential. Oh, sorry, fulfilling his potential. Is obviously that utility player, I'd sort of guess. Like, is edge towards the forward line in recent pick, but probably could play midfield or maybe even on the half back line. He's a distributor, but yeah, it's just I feel like they've probably given up a tiny bit too much. I don't think it's worth essentially a second rounder for a very late pick. I'd have thought he would have been like late third, to be honest. But I mean, if they rate him and it's a body on the park, maybe it's not much in the scheme of things. It's just, yeah, it's one of those things that, like, maybe it's not the best value, but maybe that doesn't matter. Like, Carlton's got a few young talents, so maybe it's worth just, bolstering their list with a medium level games experience sort of player. As I said, they've lost a bit of experience. So, as I said, there's been a few comments saying, oh, Carlton got absolutely fleeced, but, maybe they overpaid for need rather than, because you don't always get what's available. Obviously, there's so many clubs around you making big splashes. So, if it fits their system, fits their age profile, then, yeah, one round of the draft pick extra. It's whatever.
Pretty much. Yeah, I don't really have too much to say about Ben Ainsworth. He's just going to be like a decent depth player. We'll probably slot in straight away, I would assume.
Yeah, I'll say
He's
with
got that
Collins
good
list,
talent.
he would start, but I wouldn't say he's guaranteed to be best 22, but I think there's just some hope that his form will actually improve than what we've seen at the Gold Coast.
Yeah, I completely agree. Next on our list, Campbell Chesser has been traded from West Coast to Carlton for pick 41.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one. Campbell Chesser was highly rated as like that big body midfielder. Never quite developed. West Coast sort of gave up on him, so Carlton has given them a very late second round pick. And again, it sort of goes with the last pick, where it's like, in a vacuum, I think this is like technically a bad trade. I would not think that is worth a late second round pick.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like, where Carlton are at. This is just like bolstering their forward line a bit. I do think they'll push him a bit more forward. I don't think he goes into the midfield where, he sort of is. But, as I said, I think Carlton have been building around bigger bodied options that are still okay at ground level, like Ashton Moyer.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the rise of him and a few others. And, I think this is a move to try and get rid of some of their stopgap players, like, Lewis Young. Who was the other one that was sort of defender that played makeshift, sort of just a tall stick in the forward line.
I can't remember.
Anyway.
But yeah, we know there was another player along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, I think this is just one where they probably just want, maybe a 20 to 30 goal season from him, a bit of distribution as like a half forward, that's good at marking. But yeah, as I said, I do think the output's not worth it. But again, like system wise, it makes sense. So, maybe they're rolling the dice a bit, but they should have enough young talent. People often forget, like, Jagged Smith's coming back. The Camporellis have had a season under the belt. So they may already have the young depth, or they feel like they have the young depth that they need already.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, next is a big three-way trade as well. So this will be a little bit to go through. So Brisbane trade in pick 16, pick 22, pick 44, and pick 50. And they also they will trade out Brandon Starcevic to West Coast, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Pick 19, pick 46, and pick 52. Fremantle trade in, so they receive, would be, I guess, a better word for it. Pick 19, pick 23, and pick 46. And Fremantle give up pick 12, pick 33, and pick 44 and pick 50. West Coast receive Brandon Starcevic, pick 12, pick 33, and pick 52. And they give up pick 16, pick 22, and pick 23.
Yeah, so basically Fremantle in the scheme of, because obviously that pick 33 then went on to Melbourne for Judd McPhee.
Yes.
Basically Fremantle shuffled their spots around and facilitated for West Coast to be able to get a pick that was fair enough for to acquire Brandon Starcevic. Brisbane get honestly just decent compensation. I don't think they like absolutely feasted with this trade. But at the same time, you know what I mean? It's like, well, they had a player that wanted to go. They still got a reasonable return. And West Coast obviously get someone who bolsters out their defense. Like, their defense is honestly probably looking to start to be the next best part of their game, which is insane to see, like, from a team with so many points conceded.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of like understanding their system and where they're going to go in the future, like their backline, you can see a lot more clearly where that's headed. So, yeah, honestly, as I said, I think this is like a fairly neutral trade for all three sides. As I said, Fremantle technically had to give up a tiny bit, but they get Judd McPhee, which was a fairly decent trade that I thought. And West Coast and Brisbane just like pretty much just traded assets, really. Again, Brisbane were always gonna be a bit on the back foot considering that Starcevic indicated that he wanted to go, but still got good compensation. Like, this is just good list management. It's not so much a win, but it's how you keep the list going. And I think all three sides did all right.
Yeah, I think they all actually benefit from this trade very, very well. Each of them now have fairly decent picks in round one. They basically just shuffled their positions around. Brisbane, they did drop down to 2 picks in round 3, which I don't think will be too bad for them. They actually tend to be pretty good at finding players down that low anyway.
Yeah.
Even if they do take a couple of years to kind of mold out. And they do lose a dual premiership player in Brandon Starcevic, which isn't obviously the greatest. But West Coast are a team that need that kind of veteran leadership in their defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when they lost Kennedy down there, and not Kennedy, the other one, McGovern, thank you. Especially when they lost such a key veteran player in McGovern down the back.
But again, like, as much as I said that, like, I thought it was going to be an absolute disaster class once they lost McGovern, and they just held on with the young talent.
Harry Edwards, huge shout out. Like, he's been so good when he was in.
Yeah, Ruben Gibney as well. Like, I know he's like gone from the midfield to back, but he seemed to have slotted straight in. It's more just like that halfback distribution, and I don't think Starcevic's disposal will help that, but he'll at least be defensively accountable enough, to help some of that rebound from the initial entries, prevent so many inside 50s from happening. And I think that's something that West Coast will have to patch up. Otherwise, these young defenders, I mean, we saw it this year, like, none of them really played badly, but they still had big scores scored against them.
Yeah, completely agree. And there has been a bit of news that's come in earlier today that will also add on to that. But before we do, we've got one more bit of information to jump onto, and it's a pick swap.
Yeah.
So the Western Bulldogs traded pick 12 to GWS, and GWS transferred over pick 14 and pick 37. The rumor currently is that pick 37 will be used to go to the Gold Coast Suns to give the Giants. Sorry, I got there eventually. To give the Giants Connor Bitterick.
Yeah, and honestly, I think 37. Again, I think 37 is a tiny bit high, but for GWS, it's it's a very good. Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So as I said, I was going to say the Giants don't need Connor Butterick, and it's like, Western Bulldogs need Connor Butterick. Yeah, no, I would trick. If I was the Bulldogs, I would trade 37 for Butterick in a heartbeat, even though I think he's worth less in a vacuum. But as I said, Connor Butterick is really good when he's on the field. Got a bit of body issues, but you just need some support for Rory Lobb, and you need the Bulldogs not to be so. Like I said, it's the reason why they didn't make finals this year is that their defense was just so porous.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, they just don't have any players back there. And as I said, you can pick up Connor Butterick. He needs a new home, obviously. With the Suns' defense being very reasonable, probably not as good as they were in 2024. But, with the system that they played, as I said, has allowed them to be a bit I think, looser in general because they can generate so much score.
Yes.
And as I said, so they don't need that sort of lockdown defender like Butterick anyway. So, yeah, as I said, his talents would be much more appreciated at the Dogs.
Yeah, I completely agree. This will be if once the deal eventually goes through, which it should happen during this week. It'll be such a huge get for the Dogs because they definitely need that assistance. Because again, it's mostly honestly just been like Rory Lobb and that's it for half of their back line.
Yeah, Liam Jones is retired now. And they have who's that? Oh, they've been trying to build up Jess Buslinger.
Yes, Jed Buslinger.
Jed Buslinger, and O'Donnell. That's the other one that's
right.
been reasonable. But yeah, he's still very raw, very young, has a few off games. So yeah, it's about supporting that cast. So yeah, they have some youngsters that they're going to bring in, but at least they have two defenders to help them out. And allow some of those rawer defenders to just play third, or even they take second, but allow more intercept. Like Rory Lobb, we've seen him be so good one-on-one, like absolutely answered any questions about defensive accountability, but lost some of that intercept game that he was so well known for in 2024.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of defenses, we are actually going to jump back over to West Coast defense as my boy Tyler Young has officially been traded to the West Coast Eagles for pick 38.
Yeah, and honestly, again, this is about what you'd expect. Tyler Young, obviously, he was part of the injury game.
Yes,
yeah,
he was part of the ACL boys. Very sad. But in his debut year in 2024, he was touted as one of the best one-on-one defenders in the competition for a while, which is why Richmond fans have always rated him so highly as part of our rebuilding defense. But yeah, I believe he's from WA, so we wanted to go back home.
And again, like, if once you have those injury scares, it's like you want to be secure and with family, so you sort of understand it. Obviously, again, that situation, unfortunately for Richmond, lowers their trade value, but Richmond have so many picks that I think just getting something decent back from him is okay. West Coast, obviously, I think just win this trade outright. There's no way about it. This is just slightly unfortunate for a team that's had very decent draft news in the last couple of years, but there's not really much you can do about it. I wouldn't fault Richmond's list management. It just happens.
Yeah, I guess the other way to look at it is that we have currently 2 picks in the top 10 still, as well as this new pick in pick 38 that's just come in. We're looking to maybe trade out our second first-round pick to get 2 more from another team, and to maybe end of first round and maybe start a second, something like that. So if we play our cards right, I think we could still have a very decent draft hand.
Yeah.
But either way, I don't think we actually really need too much from this draft at the moment anyway. Maybe some more, maybe another midfielder we're kind of probably looking at, and probably another defender now that we've lost Young.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, as I said, like, as I said, in the scheme of things, I think Richmond still have enough talent down back to where it's going to be like, okay, it's disappointing, but, as I said, you can't get everything in an AFL side, especially when you're struggling, unfortunately. So, yeah, as I said, bit of a cop, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, and then our last bit of news at this point in time from the trade period is that Will Brodie has officially been traded to Port Adelaide, and Fremantle will receive pick 103, which apparently doesn't really exist. But I mean, hey, if Port are basically getting a player for free, you may as well take it.
Yeah, right? It's basically free agency at this point. And as I said, Will Brodie is one of those very weird players. Had a breakout season when he went to Fremantle, signed a big contract, and just fell out of the side. As I said, it's been very weird. Like, it's been okay in the waffle. Honestly, as I said, some Fremantle fans, I mean, honestly, it's anyone's guess whether it's actually AFL standard or not, because it's like, well, like, they know through training, they know maybe it's just like his body hasn't been right. And he's also very much he is a uncontested pill accumulator, which doesn't exactly suit Fremantle's style, but, as I said, so this could be just a thing where it's just like, okay, you've got no trade, like, Fremantle tanked their own trade currency for Will Brodie. They basically got him for free anyway, so it's like, okay, we'll just trade him. They might have a project player that they might use this pick for. Maybe it's just used for the player known as pass. So, who knows? But as I said, for Port Adelaide, it's a bit of midfield depth. Again, they've had some problem with like literally getting the pills, so a player like Will Brodie might actually fit that. But again, I'm not even sure his best 22. But again, I guess even with the news of Zach Butters, like, will he, won't he go? Like, yes, I mean, Porter pretty sure that he's staying, but I guess it's like a security option.
Yeah.
Break in case of emergency, break glass for Will Brodie.
I mean, as you said before, like, Port kind of need more bodies to kind of throw at the wolves. And
yeah, I think it's just like, it's weird because I think like it's part of Port's problem where it's like it's a bit older and slower, but I think Brodie, I think Wines is like still good, but as I said, he's a bit. It's a bit harder for him to be contested and dispose the bill properly. Like he can get it, but he's not that great at disposal.
yeah,
So I think like a player like Will Brodie, I think it's just like allowing those handball chains to better distributors. I think that's what Port are looking for. If you can get the ball in Zach Butters' hands, Connor Rosie, you're doing fairly well. So yeah, as I said, no one just allow that, and they didn't give up much for him. I don't think Fremantle's fleece, they're not using Will Brodie anyway, so it's like doesn't matter. This is essentially just free agency through the draft.
yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't really have any sort of opinion on it. Like, again,
Yeah.
French player, like, you're not really going to do much with him when you have such good depth anyway around him.
Yeah, exactly.
You may as well just give him to a team that could maybe utilize him, whether it's via injury or just he suddenly showed some good promise in the Sandful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, again, it's one of those things where we've got a lot of, I think it's also the thing, we've got a lot of veteran, we don't actually have much midfield depth. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of them are just sort of stuck in that sample. So even if he stays there, he just sets the standard for the next crew. Like, Port Adelaide have a history of doing that. And, as I said, on the flip side for Fremantle, a lot of their younger players are on it. So it's, like, pointless having Will Brodie when your young guns are, like, Brayshaw, Sarong, already on the park. So even, like, Erasmus and the other one, Johnson, as I said, they make their side regularly enough for them not to need to worry about having someone like Will Brodie in the waffle.
Yeah, that's right. And that brings us to the end of episode 79. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us this week. Sadly, Psyrick does have to go home. He will be flying out on Tuesday when this episode goes out. So send you your best travels down in the comments section. Do you have much on for the rest of the week when you get back?
Recovering.
Oh yeah.
yeah, not too much. So as I said, I think I use this chance to maybe, like, as I said, chill weekend, maybe just catch up on the AFLW. Unfortunately, we've been busy enough to miss that. We'll be covering that next week, hopefully.
Yep.
And yeah, as I said, just relaxing, trying to get back into the groove of it. Yeah, what about yourself?
I'm hoping to. Oh, I go back to work on Wednesday, so I'm not looking forward to that. It's what it is. I'm hoping to get to an AFLW game this weekend. I can't remember who we're playing. I was reading it before and I've already forgotten.
Yeah.
But it's the second round of the Pride rounds, so I'm very much looking forward to go to that and hopefully to get myself a new Pride round Guernsey because I really love our new design. It is fantastic. We will display actually all 18 Pride round designs for the AFLW next week as well when we talk about it. But otherwise, yeah, not too much. Just catch up with the HSP crew, see how we're doing post recovery. Make sure everyone got home safe.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe do a bit more streaming again. Just whatever time I've got free, basically. And yeah, just otherwise just recovery. Tomorrow's my recovery
day. Exactly.
Tomorrow is my recovery day.
My whole life is my recovery day.
Oh yeah.
One day I'll get there.
But yes, thank you all so much for coming to hang out with us this week. Please go check out socials as per normal. Of course, again, I'll be posting some stuff related to what we got up to at PAX and things of that nature on my Instagram and my Twitter. So please go check those out. And otherwise, we will see you all next week for episode 80. So until then, take care.